everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Art Study of You. I am extremely excited to bring another person to come in to share their experience and to really bring you guys just quality. And her story is fantastic, what she's doing internationally. She's been to a lot of places. She does a lot of great work. I've known Catherine now via LinkedIn only, which has been great. We've been able to communicate back and forth, but I just love how she brings it every time we talk, what she posts about and what she does. So I'm extremely excited. So Catherine, thank you for coming on. Thank you for being a part of this project. I know there are going to be many that listen to what you say and be inspired. So if you could, take the first, 5, 6, 7 minutes, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you come from, your background. We'll just kind of give you an open forum and then we'll go from there.
Sounds good. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here with you. It's quite an honor. I admire everything you do, Cameron. So I appreciate having a chance to participate in the great things that you're doing.
Thank you.
So to tell you a bit about me, you can hear it in my accent. I am not from here. I always joke. I said I am from Paris, Texas, but nobody understands or believes me, right? Paris, where?
Yeah.
So yeah, I was born in France a long time ago, and I grew up in a small town in France from a family of entrepreneurs who taught me the value of hard work, of respect of others, and of going after your dream, because this is what entrepreneurs do, right? You have an ideal life, you want to create something that's your own, and you find a way to make it happen, no matter what happens or no matter what people tell you, because you face a lot of walls when you start launching ideas like that. So I come from France. I traveled in a lot of different places all over the world. And I was able to travel because one of my first job was a job in sales and marketing. It was international sales and marketing. And I was hired to sell big 12 tons cast iron parts in countries all over the world. So it was an amazing mission for me that took me to countries like Bahrain, Dubai, Saudi Arabia, Taiwan, Hong Kong, all over Europe, in Northern Africa. And what I did, I started to negotiate with large government agencies as well as large corporations in those countries that needed our services. And what was interesting, I was about 25 years old, so about 25 years ago. And I was, of course, a blonde woman going to Arabic countries where we did not want to talk with women. But guess what? Marketing is about making an impression. Marketing is about differentiating yourself from everybody else. And I made a mark there because that was very unusual. And of course, working with those countries was very beneficial because they needed our products, and I was able to provide them with what they needed, and it helped our company dramatically. So traveling all over the world, I came to the United States in 1999, right after Hong Kong was taken over by China. I lived in Hong Kong about 3 years before I came here. And when I came here, I had my sales and marketing background, and it was the big internet boom. And right. I decided to learn everything about the internet. I mean, if you want to be a well-rounded sales and marketing professional, you had anyway then to understand design, web programming. So I became a webmaster, understood everything about internet and web design, and learned all these great softwares like Adobe, Photoshop, Illustrator, and Premiere to create amazing content, because at the end of the day, content is king. And I'll be talking about this. You can have the best marketing ideas, but if your content is mediocre or is not relevant to your audience, you're wasting a lot of money, and it just does not work. So I did that and started a life in the United States in 2000, where I was able to learn a lot and start working for other companies, which I did to build some experience. And as you can imagine, you arrive here, you don't know the country very well. You have an accent that was even stronger than mine now. My accent doesn't go away. It's something that just is stuck somehow, somewhere. I've tried everything.
Right.
And it does not go away. So it's interesting how people react to it. Some people talk to me in a way that they think I'm not able to understand them. So they have a tendency then anyway, not anymore, but they had a tendency to slow down when they were speaking English, or to, pay attention to what I was saying twice because it was harder for them to understand me. So you learn to adjust when you come in as an immigrant. You have to learn to adjust to your new society. You have to learn to adjust the way you speak, because otherwise people have a hard time understanding you. And if you cannot be understood, you have a big problem, right? So
True.
I spent a lot of the initial years adjusting, learning about everything because I was not familiar with much. And then eventually, you create your space, and you just you just integrate and you enjoy this new world, right?
Yeah.
That's yeah.
Wow. 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 I mean, holy cow. I knew I was going to ask you about the four languages that you speak, but I'm intrigued, I'm intrigued. I need to ask two follow-up questions. One of them is, take us through that process of coming into a country, right? You don't speak English very well, heavy accent. Take us through that process, because I hear this a lot from people that do have accents, right? They feel like they're treated, that they're dumb, right? Or they're not very intelligent, or their book smart is low, their IQ is low. And so what happens is that people that are talking with slow down a little bit, and then or they'll take really high and they talk really high to them, like as if like they can't hear you. So I'm going to talk higher. If I talk loudly, you're going to understand me better, right? So take us through that process real quick of what that transition was like, of feeling like you were less than because that's how you were treated, based on an accent and not based on the merits that you have. Obviously, you have phenomenal credentials of your marketing. We'll get into that, but I want to take us through that process of that feeling of, man, I don't feel like I'm good enough just because of my accent.
Yeah, well, it all comes from education. And most people that do not react well or don't know how to handle this, it's because they lack the education. So I think it's critical, because so many people are like this. They come to the US, they may not know the language very well, they try to adjust. You have to always approach everybody with kindness, respect, and understanding. Once you do that, eventually they get to know you. And I think if you make the effort to learn and to embrace a society, and if you are not trying to impose your own cultural specifications or needs onto the country that you come into, which is very important, by the way, I'll talk about that, it makes a whole difference. If you come to a country, you have to adjust to this country. This means you have to learn the language, you have to learn the culture, you have to educate yourself about everything that's important. And once you do that, people start respecting you. And that's it. And always show kindness, always be open, never feel or act like you are inferior, because you're not. They may want, or you may think they want you to feel this way, but a lot of it is false perception. So right. You just have to act with a lot of emotional intelligence and listen and adjust, because people want you to be successful at the end of the day. They want someone that they can relate with, someone that's going to make them feel better about themselves, someone they can learn from. And if you really come into a country like this with this state of mind, it's going to work out very well for you.
Oh man, that is, wow, powerful. That's powerful stuff. It really is, the kindness and emotional intelligence. I think there's such a big nuance, or this big idea of what really intelligence is, right? And there's multiple facets. I love emotional intelligence. It's great. It's studied. Oh man, fantastic stuff. So, okay, let's get back to how do you know four languages? Tell us that process. Obviously you're born in France, so you're French, but there's four of the language. French is one, English is the second. Bring us in that space of, how did you learn four different languages? I struggle with the English as it is, but how did you, and why did you want to learn an additional two different languages in the process?
So I am from Europe, and in Europe, you have to learn languages because countries are so close to one another. And you have to learn languages if you want to do business. It's as simple as that. So in France at school, We have to learn English right away. When you're 4 or 5 years old, you start learning English. And then 3 years later, you have to pick another language. So you pick either German or Spanish or Italian. This is what typically people pick, another European language. And then if you want to really have a space in the sales environment, you have, to add languages. So I always loved it. My mother was from Germany. So again, it sounds like something amazing, but I have no merit because I learned English very early at school. My mother was from Germany, so spoke a lot of German to me. And then I wanted to learn Spanish just because I thought it was important. And it's interesting how the brain adjusts. The more languages you know, the easier it is to learn more languages because the brain has that, there's something scientifically that happens, and I don't remember the name, but it really does, where everything opens up and your ability to learn and to increase your cognitive senses towards languages. It's like music. It's dramatically improved. So, and you see people saying sometimes we learn 7, 8 languages, but it's easier as you go. So see, I have no merit. It's just was the way it was supposed to be, right?
Holy cow, though. Okay, so take us in there because I've heard that a lot. Like when you teach children at a young age, multiple languages, that their brain develops and they become they can speak very well and both sides. So take us through that as a child, as you're learning multiple languages, right? As you're learning to process how to speak, not only French, but then you try to, well, what's that word in English? And then you got to go to Spanish. Like, take us through that process of what it was like as a child learning multiple languages and, some of the highs and the lows that you had.
Yeah, well, you hear languages, and what typically the best thing to do is to have people, for example, if you have parents, my mother would speak German, my father would speak French. So you associate the language with the person, and then you speak, you can just shift from one language to the other. And then, for me, each time I travel, because my mother sent me to different countries each time because she wanted me to learn those languages. So as soon as I turned 8, I spent all my summers in England working on a farm because she wanted me to become fluent in English, right? And then she sent me to Germany. I was sent to Germany when I was 15 and misbehaving. I was sent in a covenant thinking I was going to learn how to behave, with Catholic nuns. But that did not work out very well for me. But I came back, I came back fluent in German, which, was a perk, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then Spain, was 3 hours away from where I grew up. So we had a lot of Spanish speaking people, and I love Spanish. And of course, here it's helpful because of South America being so close. And like I said, you don't think about it, it becomes very natural. This is why I think in this country, of course, we go everywhere with English, but if you know languages and if you travel and if you speak those languages with local people, your relationship with them is going to be so dramatically improved because you are making an effort to communicate in their language. So it's so important. And I wish more Americans would take the time to learn. It's not difficult. We can do anything. Remember, we set our own boundaries. We can do anything we want, but we set so many boundaries around ourselves that we just use maybe 10% of our abilities. And that's sad.
So go into that more, go into that. I want you to explore and touch on this more because we're going to talk about this later, but we'll talk about it now. Talk about that. What do you mean we limit ourselves? Where are we limited? Is it the thought process? Is it the surroundings, how we're growing up? Is that thought process from you part of your childhood of, no, this is where you need to stay in, or because your parents sent you to England to learn English and then sent you to a Catholic place, hopefully you be better. But how did you come to that realization of we limit ourselves, and what do you mean by that?
We are all born in a very specific place with a very specific culture. So we are all molded by our society, right? And this is the premise of our life. We are molded. Now it's like a sculpture, right? You start the sculpture, you have the base, you have the foundation, and then you can make it just about anything you want. So what I'm trying to explain is here is that who you are when you're born does not dictate who you are when you end up your life. And very often you have that parents are going to tell you, we've always been, I know, factory workers. And you have to be a factory worker because it's always been this way. And children believe what you tell them. And very often they don't question it. And if they don't have an environment that challenges them to grow maybe towards a different direction, they're not going to change. So this is when I say when I say we limit ourselves, is that we set our own boundaries as to what we believe we can do. If you believe, and if you have people around you that tell you or motivate you or push you to do anything you want, and this is what I tell my daughter, she's 26 years old. She's an accountant. She's been working for the big four companies, the biggest accounting agencies in the world for the last 4 years. And then she's just wondering, is that life? Am I supposed to be an accountant all my life? And maybe people would tell her, yes, you should, because you have all these credentials already at 26. But she's questioning everything because she's not finding her true enjoyment in life. And you can do anything. People, when I started my first company, I had my first agency in 2016. I left a full-time job, great pay, and I just wanted to do something new and become an entrepreneur. People will tell me, you're crazy. Why are you doing this? You're going to fail. And when you start an initiative, you're going to have so many naysayers trying to cancel out what you're trying to do because they cannot do it themselves, or they think they cannot do it themselves. You can do anything you set your mind to. It's just a matter of starting one step at a time, one day at a time, and then you build momentum. You're not going to build Rome in a day, but you may build, I don't know, 10 yards of a street, right, in a couple of days. So it's starting small, but moving forward and surrounding yourself with positive people who believe in you, setting a goal and going after the goal like a bull.
Oh my, look, I just want to run through my wall right now after what I just heard. I am so jacked up that you hit on a point that I think is amazing for people to understand is your surroundings don't have to dictate who you become, right? Yeah. They may be the base. They help kind of mold you, like you said, right? Develop that toughness, that skin, right? The develop that mindset of this can't be all my life is. But that does not need to define who you are later on in life, right? We can either use it as a blessing or we can use it as a crutch. And you see that so much. So what you just said is extremely, extremely powerful. And I thank you for that. We are going to get more into that later on. But let me ask you this question. So going through, did you develop as a child, right? As a child, learning the different languages, being sent to different parts of Europe to basically, I guess, kind of grow up, if you will. How did that affect you mentally? Was it, this is a positive and I can see it as a positive now, or was it like, man, this stinks, and you can see the effects of that later on in your adult life?
It's always been very positive because I was always curious. At the age of 5 years old, I remember sitting in the backyard of my house, looking at my mother and telling her, I don't belong here. I don't belong in France. I don't know where I belong, but I'm going to have to find out, right? 5 years old I was when I said that. So when you start traveling, it opens up your mind and you become curious. Some people are not curious by nature. I've always been very curious because I always wanted to learn everything about everything. And I love meeting new people. I love discovering new cultures. I love trying new foods and experiencing, different ways of life. Because if you live in France, you're going to live a certain way. If you go to Hong Kong, everything changes. You have to adjust and live a certain way. If you go to Bahrain, where women have to hide almost everything, every inch of their skin, you're going to have to behave a certain way. So that teaches a very important skill set. And I think is the most important skill set that anybody should use and have, because it will change the outcomes of their life. And that skill set is adaptability. The quicker you can adapt to any situation, the faster you will succeed and the happier you will be. That's key to everything I've done. I was always able to adjust and adapt to any situation very quickly and find peace and joy in it.
Oh, wow. I mean, look, at this point, I hope everybody is about pages and pages of notes, because what you are hearing is from somebody who has literally gone throughout the world, traveled, been a part of big corporations and done marketing, and has been a woman in a space where typically it's not been very friendly, right? You've gone to different countries, Hong Kong and Berlin, and you've gone to these areas that, like you said, you had to be covered almost every part of your body. And here you are trying to sell them and get them on something and business wise. So we are going to get into that in just a minute, but I want to just explore just a little bit more because I think it's so interesting. So as a child, let me just ask you this. What were some of the fears? Because we heard all the positives. What were some of those fears that you had as a child that you just kind of had to work through throughout the life, and does any of that still apply today, or have you been able to understand and gain the tools to get through some of those fears?
Right. So the one thing that my mother did, and maybe unconsciously, but she kept doing it, is anything I was doing was never good enough. I learned the piano when I was 5. I played the piano. I learned all the classical music, and it was never good enough, or I was never pretty enough, or I was not accurate enough. So I constantly heard that. When I told my mother that I wanted to go to have an MBA in marketing, she just questioned whether I was able to do it or not. So it was always that perspective that I received from my mother that pushed me to excel, or to want to excel in anything I did, because I had to prove myself to her. I was always to prove myself to her that I was good enough. And that has followed me all my life. And it's been hard, because no matter what I did, I was never satisfied. Because no matter how good I was, I always thought it was mediocre and that I could have done better. And it's followed me. It has been good in a way, because it's pushed me to become the best, to try to become the best at everything I was doing. But at the same time, you never feel fulfilled. So it ends up being something very negative in your life. And I realized that just maybe 5-6 years ago that I was doing this. Although I still strive to always deliver excellence, I now am able to stop and recognize, okay, that was good. So, little tap on your back, congratulations, bravo, bravo, let's celebrate and enjoy the moment of life that you have in front of you, because life goes by so fast. And if you push yourself, and it's a disease in this country, people run like mad dogs all the time, and they never stop and smell roses. They never stop and take more than 2 minutes to embrace their loved ones, or tell a friend how much you appreciate them, or travel somewhere to spend a day with your elderly father or mother that you haven't seen in 5 years. It's a disease that goes nowhere. So it's that coming from my mother, that I took very negatively when I grew up, has actually been a gift, because it has made me realize that you can work hard, you can push yourself to succeed, but you have to stop and enjoy those moments where you have done something good, and don't wait for others to tell you it's good. Most people are not going to tell you. Do it for yourself and celebrate those milestones where you have done something good.
Oh my gosh. So, oh my gosh. Okay. So I need to ask this question. What's right on the tip of my head? Give us, one or two tools that you have used to kind of get through that. Because what you just said, millions of people, men and women, struggle with what you just said, right? So give us one or two tools that you've used and developed to help you understand it, to take a step back and go, what I did was good. And I have my own self appreciation, as opposed to trying to get appreciation from somebody else.
Right. Well, I can give, for example, the example of my company now, Sliice. My first agency I built in 2016. I built it from scratch. It went very well until, not 16, it was 2006. It went very well until 2008 and 2009 hit. Economic downturn. I had bet everything on that company. I lost everything. Everything I had, I lost. I had to file for bankruptcy. I lost my home. I lost everything. I had nothing.
Oh,
The one thing I had not lost was my passion for life and my belief in myself, because I was taken down, and I can tell you that I felt like I wanted to dig 200 feet, 300 feet in the ground to disappear because I was so ashamed of myself.
huh.
But that gave me the realization that anything can happen in your life. You always have the ability to stand back up and do it again. So that what I saw as failure was actually not a failure, because building my new company, which is Sliice Marketing now, I was able to very quickly understand what I should not do, like I did, because I made mistakes, and what I should be focusing on and do it better, right? So, and also what was really important in that learning experience is I built the internal strength to withstand almost anything. Yes, I have fears just like everybody else. I'm not superwoman,
Right.
but I know how to control those fears. And I know how to put them in a certain perspective so that they don't stop me from moving forward. Yes, I wake up shaking sometimes, wondering, what am I doing? But because of my faith, I believe in God. I have
Uh-huh.
very strong faith. Because of my faith, I know that nothing great is going to come easy. And if you want to achieve levels of happiness and success in your life, you're going to have to struggle. It's not going to come easy. Yeah, some people are very lucky. Maybe
Mhm.
they think they're lucky and if everything fell on their lap for a little bit, but that
Right.
doesn't last if you have not built, the internal strength to withstand whatever comes your way, because everything in life is about perspective. It's not
Oh
what
my.
happens to you, it's about how you perceive and react to what happens to you.
Oh, oh. I definitely gonna share that part with my kids. We teach them it's not you can't control how somebody reacts to you, but you definitely can control how you react to somebody. That is so profound what you just said and so powerful. I want to just make this brief comment because what I'm hearing is, growing up the way that you did and not feeling good enough or always a measure, right? There was always a measure and you could never get and pursue that or get past that measure, right? That bar that was already set, that limiting, anybody who's read, there's called the upper limit, right? And you were this upper limiting, you didn't know what that was as a child, but as you grow older, that's what it's called. And so when the downturn happened in 08, 09, a lot of people lost their stuff. It was almost like you were familiar with, look, this is nothing. Like I already know how this feels. I've had this through most of my life, this feeling. So it was comfortable and familiar. And you were just able to push through and be like, yes, it did suck, but because I still love life, I can pursue and move forward and push on. Man, that is so amazing. The book is called The Big Leap, by the way. The Big Leap, fantastic book. Man. All right. We got it now. Let's transition. I definitely want to get into the business side of this because this is going to be fantastic. Wow. I gotta almost want to pause and catch my breath after what I just read. So, all right. I'm going to read this because I think it's very, very prevalent to kind of the direction and how we're going to go. So I read a stat from Business Insider that was published in November 30th of 2020 that 8% of the CEOs running Fortune 500 companies are female. Catalyst.org published an article August 30th, 2021 stating women currently hold 30 or 6% of CEO positions at those S&P 500 companies. So my question to you is this: why start an agency, a marketing agency in a space where it's heavily dominated based on the statistics, right? Not just marketing, but in general business, heavily dominated by the male. Why start your own company when you already had a massive uphill and a massive climb that just didn't favor you?
Because I have big dreams and I'm never going to let go of those dreams. Otherwise, I cannot live a good life. And I don't listen to statistics. So that's the first thing. The second thing is there's a shift in society. And that shift has started a long time ago, where, 50 years ago, women had no space in management, right? They had very limited options as far as jobs were concerned. That has changed tremendously. And I think that shift is just starting. I think we're going to see more and more women come to power, and it is critical because the world needs more balance. If you have 80% of the management that's male and 20% only that's female, it creates an imbalance. And it is known, if you look at the various countries in the world, the countries that are the most powerful and the most successful are countries that have a 50-50 male-female executive management, at the helm of the country. So it is critical that women gain more and more presence and power at the top level of companies, because we think differently. We react differently. We have different type of ideas. We have a heightened sense of creativity that men don't, and vice versa. Men bring maybe the more logistic or logic type of behavior and reaction. So we complement each other. There's a reason why God created the woman and the man. We are not fighting against each other. We just complement each other. I wish more men would understand that. But I think a lot of men right now that are in those power positions, and please bear with me, I admire you, you have succeeded. I'm not putting you down.
True.
But
Yep.
I wish you were more open to being challenged in the way you think and being challenged by women, and not take it as a criticism, but take it as an added value that would make your company even more powerful. But you see a lot of them close down and they're not willing to do it.
Okay, so I'm going to jump in real quick, because I want people to understand that are listening to this and seeing this on YouTube, right? Or you are speaking from a position of experience, years of experience. Look, we need to recap, because you spent time in other countries working with individuals and working with men and women, business owners, probably predominantly male-owned companies, and you're speaking from a position of authority and also experience. So I want people to understand what you're saying is you're taking years of experience and saying, listen, if we could just have a balance, right? An openness and a logicalness, and balance it together and bring it together, your companies would be more successful. Can you give us an example? Can you give us just a history or an experience that you saw where you saw great balance and the company, whether it was just starting out and exploded, or it was a already established company, but because of the balance that exploded?
Well, I'm going to give you an example that's may not be dramatic, but I think it's very relevant and people are going to remember it. When I was assigned that job of growing this company in France that was dying, and they needed to implement more new type of techniques and bring in international markets, I went to Bahrain. So if people don't know where Bahrain is, it's right next at the border of Saudi Arabia. And I went to Bahrain because, of course, I had lots of great potential targets and potential customers. So when I arrived there, and again, it was 25 years ago, almost no women doing business.
Not at all.
I always remember that day where I came into the big meeting room where my future clients were waiting for me. And it was this gigantic boardroom with about 10 men, all dressed in white with their long robes, sitting at the table. And I arrive there, I'm sitting at the other end of the table and I'm waiting and nothing happens. And after 5 minutes, one of them says, "Where's your boss?" So I look at them and I said, "Well, I'm the boss. You're going to have to work with me." You should have seen the reaction. I mean, it's almost like they all were ready to throw up right at the table and leave, right? So it took me a while to persuade them that I was able to do a good job, that they could work with me. And it was a great teaching experience for them then. And I can tell you that the difference is once they accepted me, they started working with other females as well, which opened up their doors, which changed the way they were presenting themselves. And it really created a very strong differentiating factors that helped them gain market shares that they would not have gained before. But it took a lot of education. It took a lot of trust building, a lot of work, because trust is not built in a day. But that was a game changer for that company, because they suddenly were thinking in a way that was much more powerful compared to everybody else around them, right? So that's the power of what that can do. And it just starts with open-mindedness and, again, emotional intelligence. But so many people are so insecure, and it's both men and women. So many people are so insecure that they think by preventing anything that they don't know, that has not happened in the past from happening, is going to hurt them. It does the exact opposite. Opening yourself up to new ideas, to new type of leadership, is going to make you so much more powerful that the competition, is never going to be able to equal, to compete with what you're doing if you don't do the same thing. So this is what I always say: the best companies are led by CEOs who are emotionally mature, who are very secure as individuals, and who have some type of an understanding of why women have been created.
Oh, oh my. Wow. Wow.